What if one of the most common pieces of tack in the horse world is doing something most riders never expected? We already know that an overly tight noseband can restrict a horse's mouth and place pressure on sensitive structures of the face. But researchers recently discovered that its effects may not stop at the horse's head. Tightening the noseband appeared to change the way the entire horse moves. The difference was not subtle. At the tightest setting, the horse lost an average of more than 11% of their stride length. That is approximately the length of a hoof disappearing from every stride. So, how could adjusting a noseband by only one or two holes create such a significant change in the horse's movement? In today's video, we are looking at a 2025 study that measured exactly what happened as researchers progressively tightened the horse's noseband. What they found raises important questions about facial pressure, performance, and whether the quiet mouth we reward in competition always represents genuine acceptance, or whether the horse has simply lost the ability to respond. Before we look at the results, we need to make an important distinguish. This study does not suggest that every noseband is harmful. Nosebands can be a normal part of many English disciplines. When fitted correctly, a noseband may help stabilize the bridle and discourage the horse from opening its mouth excessively. The welfare concern begins when the noseband is tightened enough to restrict the horse's normal jaw and mouth movements. For years, riders have generally been taught that they should be able to fit approximately 2 fingers between the noseband and the horse's nasal plane. That sounds like a simple guideline, but it is surprisingly inconsistent. Everyone's fingers are a different size. Some riders check the noseband over the front of the nasal bone, while others place their fingers alongside the side of the face. Some place their fingers flat, while others stack them. Two people can therefore perform the same two-finger test and produce two very different fits. According to the Plaid Horses report on this research, 85% of riders said they were familiar with the two-finger recommendation. However, when noseband tightness was checked with a standardized taper gauge, only 15% of the nosebands were actually adjusted to the correct recommendation. That suggests many riders may genuinely believe their horse's noseband is correctly fitted when it is actually far tighter than intended. This gap between what we think we are doing and what the horse is experiencing is exactly why objective research matters. The study was published in the Journal of Equine Veterinary Science in 2025. Researchers examined 8 horses wearing simple Cavazon nosebands and tested each noseband at 3 different settings. The first setting provided the recommended 2-finger space. The second allowed room for only 1 finger. The final setting was a 0-finger fit, meaning the noseband had been tightened until no fingers could fit underneath it. Instead of estimating the fit by hand, the researchers used an International Society for Equitation Science taper gauge. This ensured the different settings were measured consistently. Pressure sensors were then placed under the noseband to record how much force was being applied to the horse's face. The researchers also used motion capture technology to analyze the movement of the horse's limbs and backs. At the 2-finger setting, the average peak pressure beneath the noseband measured approximately 26.4 kilopascals. When the noseband was tightened to the 1-finger setting, the average peak pressure increased to approximately 40.9 kilopascals. That represented a 54% increase over the 2-finger fit. That result is important because a 1-finger noseband may not appear particularly extreme. A rider might tighten the noseband by 1 additional hole and barely notice a visual difference. But the small adjustment increased the measured pressure by more than half. The most dramatic change occurred at the 0-finger setting, when the noseband was tightened until no fingers could fit underneath it. The average peak pressure reached approximately 115.8 kilopascals. Compared with the recommended 2-finger setting, that was a 338% increase. In other words, moving the noseband by only a few holes did not produce a small or gradual increase in pressure. At the tightest setting, the pressure against the horse's face more than tripled. As the space beneath the noseband disappears, the horse's soft tissue can become compressed between the leather and the underlying bone. The outside of the noseband may still look smooth and polished, while the pressure beneath it remains completely hidden. Even padding can be misleading. A thickly padded noseband may appear softer and more comfortable, but padding does not automatically make a tightly fastened noseband safe. It may even encourage a rider to tighten the noseband further because the equipment looks protective. Crank nosebands require particular care because their design gives the rider additional leverage while fastening them. This does not mean every crank noseband is harmful. A crank noseband can still be fitted with adequate space, but the design makes it easier to apply far more tension than a rider can normally achieve with a traditional buckle. The responsibility ultimately rests with the person fitting the equipment. By measuring facial pressure was only part of the study. Researchers also wanted to know whether the changing pressure would affect the horse's movement. At the one finger setting, the horse's stride length decreased by an average of 6.2% compared with the two finger setting. At the zero finger setting, the average decrease reached 11.1%. The plaid horse estimated that the horses lost approximately 24 centimeters from each stride. That is roughly the length of a horse's hoof. One shortened stride may not sound especially dramatic, but horses take hundreds of strides during a training session, a dressage test, a hunter round, or a jumping course. When approximately the length of a hoof disappears from every stride, it can change the rhythm, balance, expression, and overall quality of the horse's movement. In dressage, we reward freedom, elasticity, relaxation, and self-carriage. In the hunter ring, we look for a long flowing stride that appears effortless. Jumpers must adjust their stride while maintaining enough power and balance to clear a fence. Regardless of the discipline, we generally want the horse to move freely and comfortably. Yet this research suggests that tightening the noseband in an attempt to create more control or a more polished appearance may actually reduce that freedom of movement. The researchers found a statistically significant negative correlation between noseband pressure and stride length. Put simply, the pressure increased as the horse's strides became shorter. This does not mean every short-strided horse is wearing a tight noseband. It also does not mean noseband pressure is the only reason a horse might change its way of going. What it does show is that equipment placed on the horse's head may affect considerably more than the horse's mouth. The horse's body does not function as a collection of disconnected parts. The movement of the jaw is related to tension through the poll, neck, and body. When pressure or discomfort is introduced in one area, the horse may respond by bracing, changing its posture, or protecting itself through shorter movement. The study did not identify significant overall changes in spinal or hind limb joint movement. Researchers observed small reductions in hip and stifle range of motion, but those findings were not statistically significant. This distinction is important because we should be careful not to claim that the study proved more than it actually did. The study included only 8 horses, making this a relatively small sample. Additionally, research involving more horses, different noseband designs, different disciplines, riders, and longer periods of exercise would help us understand the effects more fully. The researchers also did not establish the exact reason the horses shortened their strides. Were the horses responding directly to facial discomfort? Did restricting their jaws produce tension elsewhere in their bodies? Did the pressure affect their balance, or was the shorter stride a protective response? We do not have all of those answers yet. But the limitations do not erase what researchers measured. At the tightest setting, facial pressure increased by 338%, and stride length decreased by an average of 11.1%. Those findings deserve attention, especially when the potential solution is as simple as giving the horse more room beneath the noseband. The study also raises a deeper welfare question. Why are some nosebands being tightened so much in the first place? One of the most common reasons is to prevent the horse from opening its mouth. A horse may open its mouth for many reasons. The horse could be responding to dental pain, an unsuitable bit, excessive rein pressure, confusing aids, anxiety, or a lack of understanding. The behavior does not always indicate a serious problem, but it is still communication. It still tells us that something deserves our attention. When we respond by tightening the noseband, the horse's mouth may appear quieter, but we have not necessarily addressed the reason the horse wanted to open it in the first place. We may simply have made the movement physically more difficult. A firmly closed mouth does not automatically prove that the horse has accepted the bit. True acceptance should involve relaxation, understanding, and comfortable contact with the rider. If the horse's mouth remains closed only because the noseband prevents it from opening, we have not created acceptance, we have created restriction. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable for the horse industry. Equestrian sport often rewards the appearance of obedience. A horse with a still mouth and polished outline may appear calm and compliant. A horse that opens its mouth, moves its tongue, or resists the contact may be viewed as disobedient or poorly trained. That can create an incentive to hide the visible behavior instead of investigating its cause. But our horses cannot explain their discomfort with words. They communicate through facial expressions, posture, movement, and behavior. Resistance during bridling, head tossing, teeth grinding, unusual tongue movements, opening the mouth, or avoiding the contact may all be pieces of information. Not every behavior means that the horse is experiencing severe pain. However, every repeated behavior gives us an opportunity to ask why it is happening. Does the bridle fit correctly? Is the bit appropriate for the horse's mouth? Have the teeth been examined? Are the rider's hands clear and consistent? Does the horse understand the exercise? Is the training appropriate for the horse's current physical ability? Those questions take more effort than tightening the noseband by another hole, but they are far more likely to lead us towards genuine acceptance. This research also supports the use of standardized noseband gauges in competition. If equestrian organizations establish minimum space requirements, the rules must be measurable and consistently enforced. Asking a steward to insert two fingers is not truly objective when every person's fingers are different. A standardized taper gauge provides the same measurement for riders, trainers, judges, and stewards. It removes much of the guesswork and creates a clearer standard. But welfare should never begin and end at the competition gate. A horse does not experience less pressure simply because the ride takes place at home. Noseband fit matters during daily training just as much as it matters in the show ring. Riders should regularly check the fit over the front of the horse's nasal plane. Whenever possible, use a standardized gauge rather than relying entirely on your fingers. Look for hair loss, rubbing, swelling, or indentations beneath the noseband. Pay attention to changes in bridling behavior, swallowing, tongue movement, contact, and the horse's overall way of going. Most importantly, avoid assuming that a tighter noseband will automatically create more control or better performance. This study suggests the opposite may be true. The tighter nosebands created dramatically more pressure, and as that pressure increased, the horse took shorter strides. We often say that we need to listen to our horses, but listening means allowing them to communicate. We often say we need to listen to our horses, but listening means allowing them to communicate, even when what they are telling us is inconvenient. If a horse opens its mouth or resists the contact, our first question should not be, how can I stop this behavior? Our first question should be, why is my horse doing this? The purpose of a noseband should be to support the correct fit of the bridle, not to silence the horse. When tightening a noseband can be more than triple the pressure against the horse's face and remove approximately the length of a hoof from every stride, those extra holes are not as harmless as they may appear. Sometimes, one of the most meaningful changes we can make for our horses is also one of the simplest, giving them a little more room. So what do you think? Should standardized noseband gauges be required at all equestrian competitions? Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, I am not AI. If you listen closely, you can hear me breathing.